Well, welcome everybody. Rhonda Boyle here. I'm so glad you could join us today. This is an event for the SOAR online community, and we are here to bring you calls that inform and empower you to move forward in your life and in your coaching business through talent development, technology, and collaboration. Today, I am delighted to introduce you to Mr. Rhett Franzen. He's the Vice President of Sales of SOAR.com, and he's here to talk to us about client acquisition, which is also known as lead generation. Isn't that so, Mr. Rhett?
Yes, it is.
It is.
You can call it whatever you want. It's the lifeblood of new business.
That's it, because without that, then what?
Right.
We cannot eat. And that's the truth. So we are here. You are going to share your screen, I know, and give us some insight. I do encourage everyone, wherever you are, to grab paper and pen and take some notes, because I think he's going to give you some things to think about and to analyze and to check the box whether or not you have this in place for your business. So with that, Rhett Franzen, take it, sir.
Certainly. Actually, since it's a relatively small group, would you mind if I ask for a very brief introductions, or at least to hear from everybody what your name is, what kind of coaching you do? I think that'd be helpful.
Absolutely. Go ahead. Kathy Gattil, I'm going to start with you. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm in Dallas, Texas. I've been coaching 8 years, and I am a faith-based coach. I help church leaders and their congregation find their passion and purpose. I also do career coaching, and that can be in the church environment as well as, young professionals, old professionals, mothers that are just now launching, going back to work. So that's who I am.
Great.
Hey, Dan, you want to open up your line and go? Or let's see your face, sir. Let's see. Hey, Dan, are you? Dan, are you able to come and share with us?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, good. I can.
All right. Sorry, I was scrambling for unmute. My name is Dan Vincent. I'm just west of St. Louis, Missouri. Full-time, I am the director of a nonprofit organization called Kids Against Hunger that does food packing events. We work in Haiti. And then part-time, I have started in the last year and a half my coaching business, doing primarily career, but I also have grown with working with high schoolers through the school districts, which has been incredibly exciting. So I work with a couple of businesses, but the thing that's really kind of snowballing for me right now is working through the school districts with a program called CAPS. So that's a little bit about me.
Fun. Okay, Ryan can't talk now. Melinda Perry, come in and say quick.
Okay. Melinda Perry, I am in Gillette, Wyoming, and I am a youth coach. I do 14 to 21-year-olds, and also it seems a lot of my client base tends to be in the MLM marketing arena. So that's goodness for a little. I'm on my 3rd year, so.
Good to see you.
It's good to see you. Thank you.
Who else do we have here? Zavi, are you able to open your line?
Well, hello from Spain. I'm traveling in a high-speed train, so the connection is very, very bad. I don't know if you can hear me, but with some difficulties, I can hear you and follow you.
You sound great, and I will send out the recording.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. I see my internet may be unstable. You know what? These are first world problems. I think that's all we have with us live today. Rhett, if you want to go ahead and tell us what you got, sir.
Sure. Thank you for your time and thank you for the introductions. I appreciate that. As Rhonda has sort of set this up, this is a conversation, hopefully, about new customer acquisition. So a little bit of background. I spent the last 15 years in digital advertising. We built a retargeting business in 2007 and later sold that to the world's 4th largest internet retailer. And after the acquisition, I led corporate strategy there. But the reason I'm telling you that is because it gave me really great insights and visibility into the world's best advertisers. So part of my responsibility here at SOAR is to figure out how we can productize that or those best practices in such a way that all coaches can take advantage and leverage them. So the other thing that might be helpful for you to understand is that over the last 9 months, I've talked to over 600 coaches. And so that gives us an opportunity, and Clint Carlos has done the same, but between the two of us, we've talked to more than 1,000 coaches, and it's really given us an opportunity to find, identify, spotlight excellence whenever we find it. And the next step, of course, is to see whether or not we can take best of breed technology or methodology or whatever it is, and then distribute it to our group of coaches on the SOAR platform. So that's core to the conversation today, and I wanted to make sure that that's clear. But every time I get on the phone with a coach about funnels or new customer acquisition, there's pretty dramatic difference in experience. Sometimes I'll get responses back from coaches and they say, hey, that presentation was way too sophisticated. You got to dial it back because, coaches just aren't familiar with this kind of stuff. And alternatively, I often get emails from coaches where they say, hey, you got to up your game, right? This is too basic for us. So I'm going to do my very best to be responsive to you, but I invite you to participate in this conversation and let me know what your feelings are, or if you have questions, and that way I can steer this dialogue in a way that's meaningful. So the first thing I want to do is point out that the blocking and tackling of digital advertising or success in a digital context, you always really need two things. You have to have a web presence, of course, and that web presence can be your website, it can be a set of landing pages, it can be even a social media profile or your SOAR profile. It can be any one of those things, and we can consider that your web presence. So think about putting elements of your web environment in this big blue area here. But the other thing, of course, that you need if you're going to have a web presence is you have to drive traffic to it. And Rhonda and I talked about this just yesterday, but you have to figure out how to get people to the places that you want them so that they can then take action. And so I've taken just a moment and listed many of the things that you have to accomplish or that you might want to accomplish, either as part of your website, your e-commerce platform if you have one, or whatever web management tools that you have, but then also sales and marketing. There's a lot that has to get done here.
I can feel my blood pressure already going up, so let me just speak out to any of you if you're about to have a panic attack. That hurts my eyes thinking about all of that stuff and not even knowing what some of it means.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It
is a lot. And there's a lot going on here. But the reason that this slide looks a little funny is because it's masking all of the different logos from all of the different vendors that provide all of these different types of services. And
oh my gosh.
Wow. Holy cow.
Okay, so I just want to go on record here that I've probably tried to work half of these without any success.
Well, I think the important thing to recognize.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, I haven't counted all of them, but I'm certain that there's more than 500 logos on this one slide. This slide is created and maintained by a company called Luma Partners. They're a venture firm / banking company that helps with the acquisitions of these businesses and so on and so forth. They also make investments. But this is, for the most part, up to date and accurate because they maintain it as such. So, of course, it begs the question, Rhonda, look, you're a solopreneur. Maybe you have a partner, maybe you don't, but how is it possible for you to navigate this landscape with any degree of efficacy?
Yeah, it's not. and yet not from lack of trying.
Right.
So that's the thing, is that we've all tried little bits and pieces of this and we haven't been able to make it work. That's been my experience of most of the coaches that I talk to.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I think that's helpful, and it's helpful to think about it in that context as well. But the good news is you don't have to figure it out because we already have. And so we've simplified all of this for our coaches. We're going to continue to do that. It's a responsibility that we have. So for the sake of this conversation, we don't even really need to worry about all of that because we've checked the boxes. Instead, what we can do is talk about elements of a standard funnel and basic blocking and tackling kind of strategy and tactics so that we can do these things really well, so that we can create awareness, so that we can nurture interest within a group of prospective clients, and that we can then convert them into paying and loyal clients of ours. And so this is really what we ought to be thinking about, not this. And so for the sake of this conversation, and I know that we're now almost 15 minutes into this call, for the sake of this conversation, I would prefer that we just think about these three pieces of a typical funnel: top of funnel, middle of funnel, and bottom of funnel.
I'm glad you explained because I could not figure out what that was.
Oh, tofu, mofu, bofu?
Yes. Oh, that's funny.
Well, yeah, it's a good acronym. I mean, it's fun to say, at least.
Yeah, I have a question that I would love to hear in the chat box from those of you who are here. Is there an area where you do more than that you're better at than another? Just something to think about.
Is that rhetorical or?
No, maybe, or maybe you want to ask that question. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it is a good question. Well,
I can tell you where I am. Okay. I know exactly where my breakdown is personally. I do a whole bunch of tofu.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm tofuing all day, blabbing. And so I don't have anything automated to get me down to the bofu.
Right.
It's all manual. Everything that, here's the thing. I think most coaches are not in their lane. If coaches coach, and that's what they do best, how much are you actually coaching?
Right.
Yep.
Well, my response to that would be, and Rhonda, I can tell you empirically that most coaches have a similar story to tell because top of funnel activity is obvious. It's obvious to most coaches what they have to do, right? They have to publish thought leadership. They have to create turbulence. They kind of have to stir the pot a little bit. And a lot of times, the channel on which you could accomplish that, like a social media environment or Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn, these are obvious opportunities for coaches to sort of elevate their share of voice. So what you've said echoes what I hear over and over and over again. I can tell you, however, that there are lots of coaches that are really good at the conversion element of this, but very, very few coaches have any idea what to do with this middle section.
Right.
They just have no idea what to do. And we call this the critical middle. And so the critical middle here is where many prospective clients just go away because they've lost interest. So, and we'll talk about that a little bit moving forward. But one point that I want to make here is that this is about creating or curating an experience for your prospective clients. It's not about your journey, it's about theirs. And so we really need to sort of back up and put ourselves in that state of mind. So we recently put a small contingency of coaches through a beta program where we spent some time educating and mentoring a group of coaches and then delivering technology. And we came away with some very specific learnings from that I hope to share with you today. And the first one is we would encourage you always to start with the end in mind. Now, many of you have heard this before, but you got to have a crystal clear idea of who you are, what your values are, what your commitment is to prospective clients. That's got to be bulletproof, or you'll never be able to create a funnel that's effective. And the flip side of that coin is you also have to have a very specific and refined idea of who your target audience is. Otherwise, this will fail too. So I see Rhonda nodding her head. I see Kathy nodding her head a little bit. Kathy, what do you think about this?
Oh, I absolutely agree. I mean, I've been in sales most of my professional life before I became a coach. And I was always good networking, and I was always good at looking at resources. And I was good at closing. But translating that into a business of my own just looks so different. And I don't really know why. I haven't put my finger on it, but it's great that you're calling out that, you know, the middle part of the funnel, because I just see that as an area that I really need to investigate more tools for myself. And I agree with you about, in fact, Rhonda and I had a great conversation over the weekend. You know, you're so right about bulletproofing, you know, really knowing who you are, because then otherwise, you know, when you first get started, at least this was my experience a couple years ago, you just want business. You just want to be able to pay for your bills and put, you know, food on the table. So you will take anything. And even though I had carved out exactly where I wanted to be, and I think, Rhett, you and I, when we first spoke, I was talking about really making that switch from being a coach to really being a faith-based coach, because that's where I started. That's where my passion is. And defining a niche even more defined was so critical in moving forward, because I had a great deal of business just coming my way from word of mouth. I'm well known in the Dallas Metroplex, in you know, the church communities. But, you know, I'm at a point now where and I'd be curious with the other career coaches if they've experienced this, but business is really good in Dallas. So career coaching has really slowed down for me. And I need more in the pipeline. And that's where, when I get on a project, and I only have one staff member. So when I get on a project, and I'm moving that project forward, I need to continue to have resources that are pulling in more in the pipeline. Yeah. And I see that middle part being so critical in feeding the pipeline.
Yeah.
Am I right on that? Or
you're absolutely right. In fact, I'm going to share just briefly an anecdote, or a couple of anecdotes. I think this is a good analog, actually, to what we're talking about here. And I'll be very, very quick, because this seems like a tangent. Kathryn Switzer ran the Boston Marathon in 1967, and she was the first woman to do it with a legitimate bib. She registered under a pseudonym, KV Switzer, and she was even assaulted by a race director during the course of the race, tried to rip the bib from her. But this was a woman that had trained and did a lot of work to be able to do this on her own, right? And even her own coach told her that she was too fragile to be able to run this kind of a race. But she did it. And her boyfriend is the gentleman there on the right that's pushing the race director out of the way. But she was 20 years old and she had a tremendous amount of bravery, but she ran this whole thing and finished in 4 hours and 20 minutes. So I would like to draw a comparison to this woman who ran the same marathon in 1980, and you might remember her name, but Rosie Ruiz ran the Boston Marathon in 1980 and was announced the winner. But the problem was she had taken the bus from the beginning portions of the race to the end of the race, where she then waited for her competitors to come up, and she re-entered and then ran across the finish line. So she started the race and finished the race, but she didn't really do the work, right? And so hopefully now you're sort of seeing the comparison.
Oh, wow.
You're probably going to forget a lot of the stuff that I said, but you'll probably remember these two stories. And the fact of the matter is, Rosie Ruiz went on after this to be convicted of a cocaine deal in Florida. She embezzled money from her employer, and she later fled to Cuba and she ran away out of the United States. So look, you can try to draw as many parallels as you want between these two anecdotes and what we've got to do to really be great at this funnel thing, but you can't forget to neglect the middle of the funnel. You just can't do it, because it'll come back to haunt you. So the other thing, Kathy, that you said is really, I think, an important piece of this, because in terms of upper funnel activity, I would prefer to break down 3 pieces of upper funnel media in terms of earned media, owned media, and paid media. So think about that for a second. When you do a lot of talking on a social environment and you're creating that turbulence, when people pick it up and like it and mention you and repost and have a review, that's called earned media, right? So people are now implicitly endorsing you or explicitly endorsing you. But you also have owned media, landing pages, web properties, profile pages, mobile sites, that kind of thing. Properties that you own, where you control all of the content. But there's also a paid media component where you're going to then go advertise yourself. And this is really the combination of media that you need to have to be really effective at upper funnel activities, so that you can have the results that you need later on. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up briefly because you alluded to it, Kathy.
So can I just, I would like to just add this contribution, if I may, that my struggle with paid media is, it's never worked for me. You know, I've just nobody's been able to understand what I'm trying, I remember the last ad I did, it was like $30 and I ended up with 12 people from a country I didn't even know.
Yeah.
And, I don't even know how I did that. So this is what happens when you end up out of your lane.
Yeah.
And you lose.
Well, so in a previous life, you heard me explain, what I had done in a different context, mostly advertising to retailers. But knowing who your client is and having a lot of detail around this is critically important. So I want to show this slide because one of my biggest clients was a very large cosmetics retailer. And before they allowed us to spend their money, they always showed us this slide. And this is an example of a persona that they have created. Lauryn Hill is a fictional character, right? But they've gone to great lengths to identify elements of her personality, information about her personal life, goals that she may have, frustrations, technology that she happens to have an affinity for. But all of these different things, in fact, there's even a fake quote from Lauryn Hill about, her life and that kind of thing. But this is what this particular retailer showed me and we would sit in marketing meetings and they would say, well, I wonder what Lauren would think about that. Or, if Lauren got that email, how would she react? So the reason I'm showing you this and telling you this now, Rhonda, is because if you've spent money on paid media and you don't have this kind of specificity around your target audience, then good luck. because you're just not going to get it, right? You have to model an audience and then work with whoever's selling you the media to make sure that you're reaching the Laurens of the world, right?
Mhm.
And you just can't skip that step. So to that end, I've created a bunch of different questions that I would encourage you to ask yourself about your prospective target audience. Don't try to write these down. We'll send the slide deck, but this is, a pretty good checklist in terms of helping you identify who your target audience is. And when you feel like this is dialed in, then you're probably ready for the next step, but don't skip it. Don't get Rosie Ruiz on us.
And can I just say that a lot of times we don't think we know where to find the information, and you may not, but it's out there. And sometimes you do have to kind of use your imagination.
Yeah, certainly.
So,
all right. So moving along quickly, first of all, I guess, if you've done this, if you feel like you have a sound understanding of who you are and a sound understanding of who you want to market to and what that means, then you're really ready for the next piece. And this is a key takeaway that we cannot overlook. And my encouragement to you is to sell to your prospective clients what they want. And during that process, expose to them what they really need. So we know for a fact that even if you need a career coach, probably what you really want is help with your resume, right? These are not people wandering around with their hand in the air going, I'm in market for a career coach. Who's a career coach that I could give money to? That's not how this is working, right? They're in a moment of crisis. They need some help. They know that they need help with their resume. And this is just one example, right?
real quick, if I can just interrupt, to type
Please.
in the chat box, if you can, what is the pain point, the biggest pain point of your ideal client? Just right now, if you can chat that in there. Rhett, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. Do you want to add I'm interested to know also what your reaction is to this, Rhonda.
Oh, I completely agree with you that clients are never looking for a coach. That's just not something they know to shop for. You know, it's not like if your tooth hurts, you know how to open up the phone book and find a dentist. They think about how you found a coach, you were exposed to one. And oftentimes it's through that pain point and a coach disrupting them and making them look that allows them to see.
Yeah.
It's always on the pain and what they think they want.
You know, the other thing to consider is, well, does anybody remember Krishna's in the airport?
They used to give out little flowers. Are they still around? I think.
Why did they give out flowers?
Peace, love. It represented what people wanted. They were making connection.
Okay. Is there any other reason they would give you a flower?
So that you would listen to them.
Yeah.
To join.
Not to join, but to listen. Because remember, you're only going for the next step, right?
That's right. So I think the point I'm trying to make here is that, first of all, when you give somebody something, the psychology is they feel inclined to give something back, right? There's an inherent need to be engaged in a reciprocity. That's just human nature, you know what I mean? So if you give someone a flower, you go, first of all, it's beautiful. It engenders some goodwill. I don't know what's next or who you are, but thanks, right? And now you've captured their time a little bit. So we refer to this as a lead magnet, or some people call it bait. You could also call it a tripwire, but your flower might be a resume, but it might be something else. My point is that you need to know what your flower is, and then engage with a prospective client in an exchange, in a reciprocal relationship where value then can get exchanged back and forth, where you end up in a spot that you've earned the right to ask them for their money and they've earned the right to be your client. And that's the ideal journey, because when you get there, if there's continuity there, then it seems like a mutual decision that you've gotten to, both of you at the same time, if that makes sense.
Great. You know what? Here's the thing. We have all opted in for that free stuff. Every one of us have done it. We just don't know how to do it for us. And I think that's the big rub.
Right.
It's so far out of our lane that it feels scary and risky. And oh my gosh, right. It hits our self-confidence.
Yeah.
I think I'm speaking for, a lot of us.
Good. Well, there's lots of different ways to think about it. And it's not a new marketing tactic, right?
Yeah.
We've all seen ads from Vistaprint, right? You can get your free business cards, but Vistaprint's not in the business of giving away free stuff, right? They might give you free business cards, but really what they want is a long-term relationship where they're providing print-related services and this and that and the other, right? Business cards are their flower, so to speak. So again, the question is, what is your flower, and how can you use that in such a way that you can engage with someone in an ongoing way? I remember advertisements like this. I was pretty young, but it's not a new concept. If you go to the movie theater, they don't make money off the movie tickets, right? They make money off the
popcorn.
They make money off the concessions.
Kathy and I probably would be embarrassed to tell you how many times we signed up for Columbia Record House. We know that one very well. Look how we've been opting into stuff our whole lives, y'all. That just blows my mind.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, what this conversation is lacking so far are some more practical examples, but I want to first get through point number 3, and that is you have to have an intimate understanding and relationship with your own funnels. You just have to. So I don't care if there are 20 stages on your funnel or 3 steps on your funnel. You got to know what they are. They have to be deliberate. You can't escape them. And you need to be able to test and target as a result. So again, I don't necessarily care what you do to generate traffic at the top of your funnel. What I'm most interested in is helping you figure out, on average, what percentage of people go from here to here or here to here as that value ladder continues to climb and you're exchanging an increasing amount of value together. So I just want to run some numbers here real quick. If, for example, you published a post on LinkedIn and 500 people saw it, you might get 25% of that audience to engage in some interesting way and perhaps say visit a landing page. So now you have 125 people that went to your landing page, and a portion of that audience is going to do nothing, but a portion of that audience will do something. So let's say they click through your landing page onto a deeper link. Now you've got 62 people that are staring at a form on your page to sign up for your newsletter or whatever it might be. Well, a portion of those people aren't going to do that, but let's say 20% take action. Again, these are just made up examples, but the idea is that you can actually calculate these numbers and figure out what it's going to take to get a new client. And if you have empirical evidence that says, okay, if I reach 500 people, a new client's going to come out. So if you want 10 new clients, then you got to reach 5,000 people. And then it becomes a math problem more than anything else, as long as your media mix is correct and you're engaged in the right things and you're reaching people in a predictable way. But does that resonate with you, Rhonda?
I see exactly where my breakdown is, I think. Well, actually, that's not even true. I can tell you that I don't analyze my my own stuff. Hello, analytical number 32. I'm just saying. So that's why I have to have a team.
Sure. Well, there was a
No, because I'm not going to do it.
does anybody live on the East Coast? I mean, I know that we've got folks in the Midwest, but is anybody on the East Coast?
I'm from Pittsburgh.
You are?
I am.
You ever heard of a gentleman by the name of John Wanamaker?
Can't say that. Can't say that. Oh, he's from Philly.
Wrong side of the state, Rhett.
Sorry.
Bad form.
I can't believe I made that mistake. I'm so sorry.
No problem. No worries.
I certainly didn't mean to offend you.
No worries. Not offended at all.
Well, look, this is a gentleman who created a pretty reputable. He created the very first department store, and it was called Wanamaker's. And you may have heard of that name before in a context of retail, but he had tremendous success on the East Coast, and later then expanded into Europe and was incredibly successul. But in today's money, he would have been a billionaire almost 2 times over. But he was also a marketing genius. And one of his most popular quotes is, "Half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is I don't know which half it is." And I think that that's such an interesting way to think about what we've got going on.
He didn't have a way of tracking it, and we do today.
That's it. That's the point. So, we have some distinct advantages that Mr. Wanamaker didn't have.
Yeah.
Right? Because you can tell how many people are downloading your white paper, and you can tell how many people have filled out your form, and you can tell how many people asked you for a copy of your book or for help with your resume. But Kathy, I might suggest to you that even if you're not interested in resume writing, you should take all of those requests or all of that interest and perhaps even outsource it to somebody that's credible that you know will do a great job.
Oh, actually, the staff member I have, that is what she does.
Okay.
Cover letters. She does cover letters, resumes. And if I'm backed up and need help on LinkedIn profiles, she'll help me there.
Wow.
So yeah, I know what I do well and I know what I don't do well. And I was not much for resumes, but I knew that was a necessary evil, so to speak.
Well, I know that Dan too has done some work in nonprofit and career coaching as well. Dan, I don't know if you're in a spot where you can chime in, but I'm interested to know if you've used this tactic as well.
I unmuted you, Dan. You're open.
I have not spent any time with resumes. So yeah, I don't really have much experience with that.
Are you coaching?
The question you're asking is potentially, I feel like what you're saying is the opportunity is potentially reach people that are looking for that as a way to kind of introduce what I have to offer. Is that am I understanding that right?
Right. So, Kathy, why don't you sort of explain a typical journey then from A to Z, if you will. I mean, you have some sophistication here, but if this is representative of the process that you go through, can you explain those steps for us?
Well, I don't know that I'm that sophisticated because truthfully, so much of my business is word of mouth, or it's on Instagram, or a variety of different organizations that I'm involved in. But when someone does come to me, really one of the, we have a discovery call for about 30 minutes, and it's really to talk about, I want to find out exactly what they're needing, where they are. Are they young? Do they need an aptitude test? Because I use strengths and I use a specific aptitude test for high school and college students. Do they need the resume? Do they need cover letter? So it's not a cookie cutter, and I make that very clear because some people are very happy with their resume and even their LinkedIn profile. They really don't care that much, even though I try and sell that because it is important to hiring managers. But I always start at the beginning with Clifton strengths, and then we go from there. But at the same time, because I know that the resume is paramount to them, I make sure that Joan is already working on it. The problem is, well, not the problem, it just takes a little bit longer because some of the great language that we get out of Clifton strengths and maybe even the aptitude test put together can really help with some of the descriptions on the resume and the keywords and exactly what kind of job they're looking for. The other thing that I do in my sales pitches, I work with two highly productive recruiters, not to help my clients find a job, but to make sure I'm providing what a hiring manager needs. So that am I getting my, with the mock interviews and with Sam, just, the resume, the LinkedIn profile, presence. I mean, a lot of former military, they don't even know what to wear at an interview. So like I said, no cookie cutter, but I have a lot of the same components. And
well, that's the middle. Isn't that the front? Would that be the front and middle end of her process, Rhett?
I don't know. I mean, I think it depends on where you want to consider that journey beginning. I would like to think that it's based on what I've heard so far, it sounds like you're picking up prospective clients when they've done some of this on their own, right? And I think maybe what I would encourage you to think about is how to extend your value further into the early stages of their decision-making process.
And I completely agree with you because it is kind of interesting if it's a young professional or even high school or college age student, parents are paying for it. So parents are talking to parents, and that is where I really try to spend some of my time, whether it's on my personal social media or my business social media. But I also, being faith-based, so many of the churches I've worked with are very aware of what I have to offer, and they will actually put them in touch with me. So I absolutely...
It's just not enough, right?
Yeah, well, especially right now. Absolutely. That side of the business is so slow right now. But it's funny because as the summer is starting, there are a lot of parents that are wanting, like their kids are juniors in college. They're wanting to meet with me. So I'm starting to line up a lot of, not a lot of those, but I'm lining up those appointments because that'll help feed me into the fall. But Rhett, you're absolutely right. To reach out further rather than waiting for them to come to me.
Yeah. Well, but it also begs the question. So one mistake coaches often make here too is if you create too much value for them too early in the process, then you sort of devalue yourself later on.
Explain that a little more.
Well, I think the value ladder concept is important because if you start with a tremendous amount of value, then you forfeit an opportunity to require them to put skin in the game with you, right? What you need to do is start with these little baby steps, and a lot of that can be automated where they get value, but so do you. And the idea here is that you're on a journey together, and it's not about you shoving a coaching product down their throat, right?
Right.
Melinda, I don't know if you're still on or if you'd like to chime in. We haven't heard from you yet, but you're in Wyoming, you're doing some youth coaching. Do you feel like some of this is applicable to you or not?
No, I do. I think that while you're talking about it, I have to put myself in, like in a cat too. I know what the student need. My appeal has to go to the parents, because they're the ones who need the skin in the game. And I know from coaching that if the students can go so far, but if they don't have being an active participant in their strengths, then they're not, the students kind of shut down or just kind of lose importance of it. So I'm having to, as you're talking, rethink everything. So I have my ideation, strategic, and overdrive, figure out where my best scenario be and what to offer. I'm discovery session, but there's got to be something more than that.
Right.
Like I started my avatar, so I'm pretty working on that.
Well, so that's the very question that I wanted to ask you. What is the avatar? Is it the parent?
Good question. I think it's the student is more my avatar. And the parent is that background noise that the parent has to buy into it. So I'm kind of at a.
Right. So in terms of marketing though, if you had to choose between marketing to a parent or to a young adult that might be struggling, who would you choose to receive your message?
Question. I hate to be on the fence, but I think both of them. Yeah. I think both people need to know. So a student I coached, their parents actually went through the strengths first. And then the parent, I coached the student later, she's going into college. And they said, had we had known what was available through knowing strengths, we would have done this so much sooner because there was so much anxiety that she had. So to me, it was like, who do I target first?
Yeah. Well, all right, then let me ask this question maybe in a different way. Is it okay to have multiple personas?
I think so.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah. My argument would be that yes, it's totally okay for you to have multiple personas as long as you understand the difference between marketing to one versus the other, right? You can't say I'm serving faith-based organizations and executives and think that both of those groups are going to go through the same funnel. You know?
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's accurate. But look, maybe, Rhonda, do you have something to add to that? You probably hear this question all the time.
Well, I think who's in the most pain? It's mama. And she is so worried about her kid because, she's worried that he's not going to get a scholarship or that he's going to go down the wrong path and she's got the money. So
Right.
She would be the one I'm talking to.
Yeah.
I think
if I can pipe in,
go ahead.
just my experiences. I mean, I absolutely agree with. Is it Melinda?
Yes.
Okay, Melinda. Because typically the parent comes to me, and then the child the young adult or whatever has to really buy in for this to really work. Because there have been times when mama's been pushing it. And, they have work to do when they work with me. It's not something I do for them. It's a self-selecting process. And if they choose not to do the work, I go back to the parents, or I tell the student, I have this relationship with the student, but I still have to answer to the parents to a certain extent, if that makes sense. So but for me, my message is pretty much with the parents, because sometimes, especially if they're high school, early college, they don't know what they don't know. You know?
That's true.
But that's my experience.
And
but
guess how you're going to find out?
Buy in.
You're going to find out through testing.
Yeah. Yep.
That's how you're going to figure it out, whether, you know, which one is the best.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree. And every area is different. Every location.
You just have to figure it out in the end. Right. It's one thing getting a kid to come to a party, you know, and another, or whatever. So then you have to deal with the parents who are worried that their kid's not going to do what they're paying for. That's their biggest risk.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, those are all good points. And Melinda, I don't know that we certainly don't have this silver bullet here, right? But I think what we're talking about are sound fundamental elements to just good marketing. And so, I think some exploration is in order, some testing is in order. And, don't forget that, as Rhonda alluded to, we have the distinct advantage that we have is you don't have to speculate, right? You can test it and find out and then go do something else if it doesn't work. But I know that we're running out of time very quickly here. So I wanted to just make clear one other point as we try to debunk some of the perhaps some of the misconceptions about funnels. I did a Google search just the other day on types of funnels, and this list came up. And I want to tell you definitively.
Panic attack. You're going to stop that right now. Is that what you're going to tell us? Because that's what we need to hear.
Yes. What I'm telling you definitively is that these are not funnels, right? This is a list of web pages or small micro web experiences that someone may or may not have as a single part of this funnel. So when people say, oh, I'm launching my funnel, what they're probably saying is, oh, I'm launching my squeeze page to get an email address, or I'm launching my tripwire so that I could get more, whatever. But none of those are funnels. They are tactical choices that you might make to create experiences within a more comprehensive journey that you're trying to help create for your prospective client. And so that's sort of like my responsibility to the industry, trying to correct that. So in conclusion, the three big takeaways are: first, you have to start with the end in mind. Don't think you can take a shortcut, because you just can't. The second one is sell them what they're ready to buy, sell them what they want, and guide them, expose them to what they need. And then the third piece of advice here is get very familiar with your funnel. Know your funnel front to back, know where you're weak, know where you're strong, and then leverage that to make smarter marketing choices down the road. So with that, Rhonda, I will turn it back over to you, and I am very grateful for your time, everybody.
Well, you bet. And I am so glad to have you lay it all out here for us. It is something that we don't really like to even deal with.
Brett, thank you very much. That was very helpful, very informative. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome, Kathy. Thank you for your time.
Absolutely. So with that, Rhett, do you want to tell them quickly about the boot camp coming up in August?
Certainly. Yeah, we have, look, it's our responsibility, like I said at the beginning of this call, to establish best practices, but then productize them in such a way that as solopreneurs, you don't have to navigate that nasty landscape. And so we have a boot camp coming up in August, and it starts August 19th. It's a 12-week program, and we guide every participant through a process where we essentially will deconstruct elements of your business, challenge some of your assumptions, rebuild it with you, and guide you through a process of sort of edifying your own brand and solidifying your value proposition. And we pair that education with deliberate mentoring throughout the 12 weeks. So we pay for a coach mentor for each participant. And then really the capstone of that whole boot camp experience is the delivery of a bunch of really great technology. And so we've found that those three pieces will, for the most part, create a dependable revenue generating machine that coaches really need. And so that's the elevator pitch on the boot camp. And if you have any questions about that, feel free to email me or call me and I can explain more.
Mm-hmm. This has been great, Rhett. Thank you so much. And I am going to send out the replay and I will link you in there to Rhett so that you can find him, and to me if you have questions. I am actually in the boot camp right now as a participant, and it's work. It's work. So I just, everybody needs to know that it is. And, the thing about it that is so dramatic for me, I think, is the certain knowledge that I have the professionals around me who know what they're doing, and I can stay in my lane and do what I love to do. And I think that, wow, just is pretty amazing. So anyway, I'll fill you out on more if you want to talk about it. So thank you so much for joining us. And for those of you watching the replay, we will send all that information to you too. And thanks, everybody. Thanks, Rhett. Appreciate
Thank you so
everybody.
much for your time. It's been a great pleasure. Have a great day.
Yeah. All right. Thanks. See ya.